You know that feeling when you check your bank account and there's like $1,247 sitting there? And for a split second, you feel okay about it, maybe even a little proud. But then you remember rent is due in 6 days and your car insurance just went up, and suddenly that number doesn't feel like much of anything at all. It's this weird limbo where you're not broke, but you're also one surprise expense away from actual panic. And the strangest part? You could be earning a decent salary, doing everything you're supposed to do with money, and still feel like you're running in place financially. My name is Robert, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, financial psychology, and why some people seem to effortlessly build wealth while others stay stuck in the same financial patterns for decades. And here's what I've realized after years of studying this stuff and watching people's financial lives transform. There's this specific threshold, this invisible line at around $25,000 in savings, where money stops working against you and starts working for you. Not in some vague motivational way, but in very real, measurable, life-changing ways that most people never talk about. Because here's the thing. Getting to $25,000 doesn't just mean you have more money. It fundamentally rewrites the rules of how money moves through your life. It changes your brain chemistry around financial decisions. It alters the actual cost of living. And most people have no idea this threshold even exists, which is why they stayed trapped on the wrong side of it, working harder but never quite breaking through. Let me start with something that sounds almost too obvious to say out loud. When you have no money saved, everything costs more. And I don't mean that metaphorically. I mean literally, in dollars and cents, your life is more expensive when you're broke. You ever notice how the people who can least afford to pay fees are the ones who pay the most fees? Overdraft charges, late payment penalties, those payday loan places with interest rates that would make a mobster blush. When you're living paycheck to paycheck, you're basically paying a poverty tax on everything. Your car breaks down and you don't have $800 for the repair, so you put it on a credit card at 23% interest, which means that $800 repair actually costs you $1,100 by the time you pay it off over 18 months. Or worse, you go to one of those buy here, pay here car lots and end up paying $15,000 for a car that's worth $6,000 because it's the only place that'll work with your credit. It's like, imagine playing a video game where every item in the shop costs 40% more for you than it does for other players. That's what being broke is actually like. You're playing on hard mode and you didn't even choose it. But here's where it gets interesting. Once you hit that $25,000 mark, or honestly, even somewhere in the $15,000 to $25,000 range, the game changes. Suddenly, you have what I call financial cushion. Not wealth, not I can retire early money, just enough of a buffer that you stop hemorrhaging money on emergency fees and panic decisions. Your car breaks down, you fix it. You don't spiral into a 3-month financial crisis involving credit cards and borrowed money and stress that keeps you up at 3 a.m. doing math in your head. You just fix the car and move on with your life. Which sounds boring, I know, but that's exactly the point. Money gets boring when you have enough of it, and boring is beautiful. There's this psychological shift that happens too, and honestly, this might be even more important than the practical stuff. When you have nothing saved, every single financial decision is made from a place of fear. You're not thinking about what's best long term, you're thinking about what keeps the lights on this month. It's like being hunted. You're in pure survival mode, and survival mode makes you stupid. I mean that literally, by the way. There's actual research on this. When people are stressed about money, their cognitive function drops. They score lower on IQ tests. They make worse decisions. It's not because poor people are dumb. It's because poverty itself is cognitively expensive. Your brain is so busy managing the crisis of right now that it can't think about next year. But when you have $25,000 in the bank, that voice in your head that's constantly whispering, "What if something goes wrong?" finally shuts up for a minute. And in that silence, you can actually think. You can turn down a job that pays slightly more but would make you miserable because you're not desperate. You can negotiate your salary with confidence because walking away is actually an option. You can invest in things that'll pay off later, education, better tools for your work, even just therapy to deal with all the stress you've been carrying. This is the part nobody tells you about building wealth. It's not really about the money itself. It's about buying back your ability to think clearly and make good choices. And then there's this compounding effect that starts to happen, almost like magic, except it's just math. When you have no savings, you're stuck in what I call the expensive everything trap. You can't buy in bulk because you don't have the cash up front, so you pay more per unit for everything. You can't take advantage of discounts or deals that require paying now for value later. You can't afford the higher quality item that lasts 10 years, so you buy the cheap version that breaks in 18 months, and then you buy it again and again. But once you've got that cushion, suddenly you can play the real game. You can buy the $200 boots that last a decade instead of the $40 boots you replace every year. You know, that whole Terry Pratchett thing about boots and economic injustice? You can pay your car insurance annually instead of monthly and save 15%. You can actually use those cashback credit cards the way they're meant to be used. Pay the full balance every month, collect the rewards, instead of paying interest that wipes out any benefit. Everything gets cheaper when you have money, which is infuriating when you think about it, but also means there's this accelerating effect once you break through that initial barrier. The first $25,000 is brutally hard to save because you're fighting against the current. But after that, the next $25,000 comes faster, and the one after that, faster still. It's like you've been climbing uphill in mud for miles, and then suddenly you crest the hill, and gravity starts working with you instead of against you.
Here's something else that changes: your relationship with risk. When you're living on the edge, you can't take any risks at all. You can't start that business idea you've been thinking about because if it fails, you're homeless. You can't invest in the stock market because you might need that money next month for rent. You can't take the slightly risky career move that could pay off huge in 5 years because you need a guaranteed paycheck now. Zero savings means zero risk tolerance, which means zero upside potential. But $25,000 in the bank? That's about 6 months of expenses for a lot of people. Maybe a year if you're lean. And that's enough runway to actually take a shot at something. To invest in index funds and leave them alone for 30 years. To negotiate hard for a raise because you could survive a few months of job hunting if they fire you. To finally quit the job that's killing your soul and find something better. I'm not saying you should be reckless. I'm saying that every opportunity in life comes with some element of risk. And if you can't afford any risk at all, you can't access any opportunities. You're locked out of the game entirely. The first $25,000 unlocks the door. It doesn't guarantee anything, but it at least lets you play. Now let's talk about something practical, because I know some of you are thinking, okay, cool, Robert, but how do I actually get there? And look, I'm not going to pretend there's some magic trick. For most people, getting to $25,000 saved is hard. It takes discipline and sacrifice and probably a few years of living below your means. Maybe you're eating rice and beans more than you'd like. Maybe you're driving the same beat-up car instead of upgrading. Maybe you're saying no to trips and concerts and all the little things that make life fun. It's not sexy. It's not a life hack. It's just consistently spending less than you earn and putting the difference somewhere you won't touch it. But here's what makes it bearable. Every $1,000 you save, you're buying yourself a little more freedom, a little more breathing room, a little more ability to think long-term instead of just surviving day to day. You're quite literally purchasing a better future, one paycheck at a time. And the specific tactics matter less than you think. Some people do the 50-30-20 budget thing. Some people automate their savings so they never see the money. Some people pick up a side hustle and save every penny from it. Whatever works for your brain and your situation is the right method. The only thing that actually matters is that you start and that you don't stop. There's one more thing I want to touch on, and it's maybe the most important part of all this. That first $25,000 doesn't just change your financial situation, it changes your identity. It changes how you see yourself and how you move through the world. Because somewhere in the process of saving that money, in all those small decisions to skip the takeout or negotiate your bill or pick up an extra shift, you stop being someone who's bad with money and start being someone who's building something. You stop feeling like a victim of circumstance and start feeling like someone who has agency, someone who makes things happen. And that identity shift, that's the real wealth. That's the thing that carries you from $25,000 to $100,000 to whatever your version of financial freedom looks like. Money is strange like that. It's simultaneously less important than we think. It doesn't buy happiness, it doesn't fix broken relationships, it doesn't give your life meaning. And more important than we admit, because it removes so many of the obstacles that prevent us from finding those things ourselves. Look, I know this all might sound intimidating if you're starting from zero, or from negative if you've got debt. And I'm not going to lie to you and say it's easy or fast, or that there's some shortcut I'm about to reveal. But here's what I genuinely believe. After watching hundreds of people transform their financial lives, that first $25,000 is achievable for most people who are willing to be patient and intentional about it. Not everyone, because life is genuinely unfair sometimes, and some people are dealing with circumstances that make saving almost impossible. But for a lot of you watching this, it's not impossible, it's just hard. And the thing about hard things is that they change us in ways easy things never could. So if you're sitting there with $1,200 in your account feeling stuck, I want you to know, you're not broken. The system is designed to keep you exactly where you are. But you can break through it. You can get to the other side where money stops being a crisis and starts being a tool. It won't happen overnight. It might take 3 years or 5 or 7. But one day you'll check your account and see that number tick past $25,000 and everything, I mean everything, will start to feel different. Not perfect, not easy, just possible. And sometimes, possible is all you need.